Om Namo Bhagavate Ramakrishna. Om, salutations to Bhagavan Ramakrishna. Good morning, everybody, and the topic today is our reality an illusion? So hold on, and this is going to be some kind of intellectual or emotional or informational roller coaster. It's going to be a long one. Get your notebooks and get your cups of coffee also. I grew up on the, you can say, sea coast. And one of those things that every evening we used to go out and watch the sunset. It was so calming, so beautiful, as that huge ball of fire slowly dips in the sea behind the horizon. We used to stare at it, and it always fascinated me. Later on, of course, I came to know that that is an illusion. Well, the sun isn't. The sun is real. But if you see, as the sun descends down to the horizon, its size appears larger and larger. Why? Perceptual conditioning. We take reference points on the horizon, and that makes the sun appear larger. So that dispelled my beautiful illusions. And of course, water vapor and dust gives us a kind of a beautiful color. Well, if this is the structure, there is no such thing as sunset first. What do you mean by sun setting? It seems to be the structure of the solar system is giving us the illusion of a sun rising and a sun setting. Of course, it's harmless, and it makes the world beautiful, colorful. So, from this you can understand that illusions are never willed. You don't will an illusion. They happen. Now, if they happen, then there are other people giving a lot of tall claims. But every illusory phenomena has to have a real substratum. Take, for instance, a mirage. It has to have a substratum, or any other phenomena. There are some illusory phenomena classed as hallucinations, which have no basis or no substratum on anything real. So hallucinations or self-deceptions or even a mild form of epilepsy, they don't get classed as illusions. They are kind of delusions. Okay. If this is our illusory world, I remember another time I was in an Indian countryside. The train has stopped, like all trains, good trains, they stop in the middle of nowhere and without giving an answer. Why? And then, you see the moon. I was looking at the window, out of the window, what to do. And there the windows are open. The moon kind of running fast. But then I noticed, it's a phenomenon of the clouds moving, but it's giving that illusion. And then as we are sitting down waiting for the train to start, another train on the parallel track runs. and I get a distinct feeling that our train has lurched and is moving forward. That is an illusion. And of course, Shankaracharya and all these great philosophers, they use, okay, the landscape keeps running away from you. That is an illusion. Are we living in a world that's real, unreal? Is the senses responsible for these illusions? Is the mind, or is the very structure of matter outside is giving rise to this illusion? What is real? That has been the quest. And it may sound kind of silly. Oh no, it gives us an insight. These are profound questions about the nature of existence, about reality. And this has been studied from hardcore realists to those who deny every external phenomena, called the Buddhist Shunyavadins, the nihilists. They deny the external world altogether. So every system of Indian philosophy has studied these things deeply, and I want to present you some of the aspects of these great studies. These were ancient studies, and they serve relevance to contemporary world today, because we need to get around this world. And where are we living? Okay, we've seen other kind of simple illusions, like when two pictures are kind of merged into and juxtaposed with each other or hidden within each other. The moment the hidden picture is detected, that leaps out into your consciousness. And that's how the brain is wired. So when you see two profiles, kind of, and then you say no, either you see the two profiles or you see the vase. You cannot see both of them together, never. You either see the vase, you shift your attention, it becomes two profiles. So our consciousness, our perception is also limited here. And it's fun, magicians never tell. These magicians and illusionists, they actually study this phenomena in order to entertain and also educate. And we are left gasping, my God, how is it? We are sure that this guy was here and this guy has just disappeared and lands up somewhere else, even with the change of clothes. How is it possible? So that is an illusion. Okay. Now we might not, I want to disabuse you of the idea that this might lead us to a kind of a philosophical solipsism. That is, the self alone exists, everything else is kind of illusory. Otherwise, what happens? It will make us selfish and self-centered. So this is not anything to do with real philosophy of studying these phenomena. Okay. So if these experiences are taken as real, illusory experiences, then what is reality? Is it a mix of both the illusion and the real? This is not a clever loop into a loop argument. It has puzzled great minds. And so, we see that there is a kind of a sequence of steps that leads us to the final cognition of an illusory phenomena. We will get into this slowly. One of the first, in the Western traditions, one of the first ideas of the nature of this external world was mentioned by Plato in his allegory of the cave. There are people who are chained in that cave and there's the fire behind them, and they can see only their shadows. They can hear voices, and they are taking those shadows on the wall of the cave as real. They are projecting reality on them. So this is one way of looking at it. The external world can never be known because it's a shadow. The reality is made of these perfect forms. So he had spent all his life speaking about an ideal world and this world outside, imperfect world. We know our senses are so limited. It's obvious. Any dog lover will know that. Yeah, I mean, look at us, and we take so much pride in our kind of sensory kind of systems. Yeah, they're good enough. So to offset these limitations, we have been making instruments that can peer deeply and far away, and this James Webb telescope is one of these phenomena. We don't want to be deceived by either our senses or the external world, and the history of science has been a constant grappling with what is real. Okay. So whether this phenomena of illusions is inherent in nature or projected by our minds is still debatable. Talking about senses, now there is something called the sensory deprivation. If you get into a chamber where you are completely deprived of any stimulus energy coming in, you are going to see hallucinations. The brain itself is projecting all those images. What happened? Even with the senses dysfunctional, we are having a kind of an experience. Some of these images that one sees are frightening. Some are kind of puzzling. Some are kind of, they rattle us. There's nothing out there, and yet I'm seeing these things. So real perception is in the mind. So visual perceptions, we know how it happens. I don't need to elaborate on it, just kind of briefly. Nothing but stimulus energy enters into our eyes. The eyes are like a camera. They have a kind of inverted image formed on the retina, and that goes to via the optic nerves back to the back of the brain. 40 centers in the brain are kind of dedicated to the visual perception of things, to cognition. And they kind of make a composite of all these millions and millions of, you can say, streams of nerve impulses coming in. And that is how we see the world. Okay. Secondly, there is no color outside. Everything comes in, there are rod and cone cells that kind of differentiate what kind of wavelength this is, and that is interpreted by the brain. There is no color out. Why? It would have been a dark, gray, black and white world. Well, that's what actually it is. There's something going on here. Imagine, but then this illusion is good, it gives us color. What would life and the world be without color? So what's happening? Is it nature deceiving us? Apparently it seems like that. We can hear only limited things, and yet we project things outside. We can see, we can understand things from 1 millimeter to 1 mile, something like that. And the rest of the thing is just an illusion of a mind. So there's one thing called, you can say, this world looks hard and solid and stable. It isn't. What? Yeah. Basically, all matter is nothing but empty space. So here it is. And it's not these ancient philosophers telling us about it. There's something called physics also, quantum physics. That the world that we see, the external matter is only at something 4%. They'll be revising it, don't worry. At least for now, it's only 4%. The rest all is dark energy, dark matter. The universe is hidden from us. So what we are experiencing is only a fraction of reality, and that also comes to us distorted. So the mind, apart from its own, you can say, interpretation of data, it interprets data, it also contributes to data. There is something called, there was an experiment long time ago, London, I think it was. There were people given glasses that saw everything upside down. Kind of, we are sitting here and you wear those glasses and you see people upside down. And after a while, the brain corrects that, and though the glasses are on, it sees right side up. The brain was contributing to your perception, to your experiences. Still slides, still pictures moving at a speed of say 23 or 24 frames per minute. They are just still pictures, but you get the illusion of movement. That is your brain doing that. Objects at a certain distance don't change the dimensions to us. They are all stabilized. Yeah, that's the brain doing that for us. See how, and we just kind of ignore that brain, keep it unhealthy. Okay. Okay, so much for the stabilization. When you see rail tracks converging at a point, you know that rail tracks don't converge. Perception is different from knowledge. I think I can drill this in. Suppose you can say dip a stick in water. The stick appears bent. You know the stick when dipped in water don't bend, but you are seeing it. Okay. So you have something called the perception, and you have something called the knowledge also. A mirage. We see the mirage, and then we know, and if it's the first time you're going to have trouble. But then we know this perception and the reality is different. So here you have these two distinct forms of, you can say, mental processes. So in the old days, they used to have, in Indian philosophy, they used to call the you can say the Gandharva Nagari. They used to say that's the city of the celestial minstrels, and you could see a whole cities of sometimes whole villages in a mirage. And the moment you see, okay, I can hear the music, but it's just a kind of a mirage. Hot layers and cold layers of air kind of they distort the rays of the sun. Even alleged UFO sightings could be something like that. I saw it. Sorry. That you saw it, okay, I didn't see it. There is something called trans-sensory phenomena also. It's called synesthesia. A musician, if they hear some musician, they hear a particular note, they can see color. Or somebody hears a note and sees something else. That also is there, a feeling of touch. Like the music enraptures you. Yeah. There's also a phenomenon called the mirror ego illusion. You touch your face and you feel the image in the mirror also is touching the face. Well, it's getting interesting, isn't it? Okay. So we can go ahead. Now, we have Bert here, and he probably knows that after you come out from a rough boat trip onto solid land, you feel the land also kind of moving. You can watch, Bert can watch that for me. You put a hand in hot water and then put a hand in lukewarm water, and the lukewarm water feels cold. I could go on and on and on enumerating. These things are kind of experienced by everyone. Okay, even lifting a heavy weight and then after lifting another weight slightly lesser, that second one feels so light. So it's not just visual, I'm trying to experiences. The entire, you can say, senses and the body are giving us something different from what is exactly experienced outside. So very briefly I'll go through some of the predominant theories which are kind of going around there. One is idealism. This, as I mentioned earlier, was studied by the Buddhist Yogacara school. Buddhism has 4 main schools, and we kind of, for us, everything is clumped together. No, they have very distinct philosophies. One of that system of philosophy is called the Yogacara. They used to practice yoga, and they were the subjective idealist. Okay, they talked about momentary consciousness. Every consciousness flickers, but when it flickers out, it gives rise to the second consciousness. It's like you see a kind of a stream of bulbs going on and off, on and off. You feel it's running. Nothing is running. It's just the bulbs are just going on and off, on and off. It gives you an illusion. They should take a whirling firebrand, whirl it round. What do you see? You see the illusion of a light, a circle. Is this circle of light real? After a while it fades because of that persistence of vision. You see that circle of light. What is real then? This external world is real because of that flicker. Consciousness flickers over. At least these guys have been better. There are those, as I said, the nihilist, the Shunyavadi. Shunya means emptiness. Everything is empty. There is no subject, there is no object. My God. A long time ago, not long time ago, a couple of years ago, in LA, we had a kind of a interfaith gathering, and it was a turn of the Buddhist a friend of mine, Bhante, to speak in briefly about Buddhism. So I said, Bhante, you're in a big fix. He didn't know where to start and where to how to start and how to present it. Tell them there is no God. There is no world. There is no mind. And there is no self. That's all. And he laughed and laughed and laughed and laughed. And the other guys are looking puzzled. What kind of religion is this? Well, it is. They completely depended on just intellectual reasoning, the power of yoga and psychology. It might seem kind of radical. It is. And it's been here for 2,500 years. So it's an old radical theory, but it is now coming mainstream. So much for that. They don't just dismiss everything out. But in the 18th century, there was an Anglican bishop called George Berkeley. He presented to the West this idea of subjective idealism. There is no external world, and the objects that we see around are there as long as you cognize them. When you don't cognize them, do they disappear? No, they don't disappear because God is cognizing them. So that gives them a kind of a reality. So in brief, of course, there was another great philosopher, Immanuel Kant, and he completely he was more interested in countering John Locke and his realism, but he wanted to present realism on the basis of reason. And he said reason is the yardstick for everything. You can understand, you can get knowledge through reasoning. And he spoke about these categories of time, space and kind of matter, and also these are frameworks for cognitions. So, and wonderfully saying that the brain itself, the mind itself gives us the read. There is something called a thing in itself, he says, and which is unknown, and the mind kind of works. So his philosophy, I mean, if anybody reads the Critique of Pure Reason, amazing. And there are, of course, most of us, if you have read Hawking's Brief History of Time, it's so kind of mind churning and brain hurting. And at the end you come, what is time? What's time? Oh, it's time. Oh, I've been speaking for almost half an hour. That's not time. So for many, time is an illusion. Time is a part of space. And a lot of people say, oh, time, space. No, it's fundamental. Einstein put it nicely. But they kind of do one mistake. They don't include the laws of causation inside this. It's an old Indian, you can say, doctrine. Desh, Kala, Nimitta. Time, space and causation are intertwined. It's not a separate dimension. It is integral into each and everything. Okay. So time is there are other you can say theories in this. One is there is something called the presentish, that is what is presented right now in time is real. The second is growing past illusion, that is the past and the present are real, the future is unreal. And the third is eternalism, There is no physical difference between the present, the past, and the future. It's an illusion. So, he's saying because most of our experiences are subjective. What's objective time? What are you talking about, objective time? But there is time molding things, time and space. It's molding things, and yet it's so abstract. So, we need to take recourse to a subjective reading of time. Yeah, when you're bored, time just hangs heavy around your neck. When you're working, time flies. So, it's there. It's kind of part of illusory phenomena. So, Swamiji says, I'll quote Swamiji. When the Hindu says the world is Maya, people at once get the idea that the world is an illusion. This interpretation has some basis as coming from Buddhistic philosophers. Because one section of the Buddhist philosophers, in those days there was no such thing as Buddhism and Hinduism separate. Okay, these guys, it happened during the colonial times. That kind of Buddhism and Hinduism, there was but for all practical purposes, we will use them as a kind of separate branch of philosophers. So, they did not believe in the external world at all. And Swamiji continues, but the Maya of the Vedanta in its last developed form is neither idealism nor realism. We are not talking about idealism, not talking about realism. It's neither. It cancels both and steps away, saying this is a simple statement of facts. Maya is a simple statement of facts. Now that is profound. Maybe in the future we could kind of take one of those statement of facts, okay, of what we are and what we see around us. So, it was mentioned that the brain reads only a part of the stimulus energy that comes. It's just not possible for the brain to receive each and every stimulus that comes in. It's just not possible. It will be overwhelmed. It will take only those things which are essential for our survival, for the survival of the body. It disregards everything else, and whatever it takes, it uses and then stores to be filed later on in the state of dreams. Okay. Secondly, the stimulus energy that comes in is subject to distortion. As we have seen, things come in, they are kind of distorted. So, that in Vedanta is called artha-dhyas. Let's not get into, but then they are talking about stimulus energy that comes in is distorted. Artha adhyasa. The mind contributes its own data to that stimulus energy that's coming. That contribution of the data in Vedanta is called jnana adhyas, knowledge superimposition. We superimpose certain preconceived ideas on what has come in. So, Swami Vivekananda beautifully kind of, I'll just present what he speaks about, saying, you've seen pearls, how they are made. A small kind of grain of sand or whatever gets inside, and the oyster throws out its own enameling, its own juices, and that covers that irritant or a bacteria or whatever microbe, whatever comes in, and that forms a pearl. Similarly, something comes from outside into a mind, and the mind throws its own enameling, as it were, outside. So, he calls this X. Anything that coming from the external world is still unknown and unknowable. the moment it comes into my mind, the mind contributes, then it becomes knowable. So X, unknown quantity, plus mind is the world. Each of our individual world is X plus mind. And this X is common to all of us. All of us. The mind, of course. The mind. Do you mind? Or you absent-minded? Yeah. And this also was dealt with by the Upanishads. Oh yeah, kind of. I was absent-minded, I did not see it. I was absent-minded, I did not hear it. Okay. There are these kind of illusions, but they are classed as pseudo illusions. It's like, suppose a lazy worker in the office suddenly hears the word fired coming from his boss. He overhears that, and all his fears kind of take over. The boss had said tired. God, oh, everything, the tension leaves. Okay. So all our wishes and anxieties and all are kind of projected. This projection is called superimposing our mind on external phenomena. This is what is called the great doctrine in Advaita Vedanta called Adhyasa. If that cannot be understood, you can never understand Advaita Vedanta. And this is that super fine, you can say, Shankaracharya is kind of presenting this aspect of Advaita Vedanta. In fact, the one of the main treatises on Vedanta is called the Brahma Sutra. He starts with this adhyasa. It took me years and years to plumb deep and deeper into it. Amazing. So we won't go into Shankaracharya's explanation. That's kind of, it will make my head spin and your head spins too. And you might think, oh, that's a whirling firebrand. So it happens like this. Swami Vivekananda said that is also used in Vedanta. This kind of sthanu purusha, like there's a stump of an old dead tree. A policeman going there says, that could be a thief. A thief in one other corner is saying, that might be a policeman. A child who has been told ghost stories screams, that's a ghost. A young man waiting for his girlfriend, think, there she comes. And the girl waiting on the other side, think, there he comes. But when the light is brought in, it's just a stump of tree. We have been projecting things on that stump of tree. Okay, amazing. Sthanuva Purushova, is it a stump of a tree or a person? Okay. So, where do we start? Where do we end? Let's put it like this, that this entire objective world is an illusion. How can you say? You're going to have a cup of tea now, and then is that an illusion? No, that's not real. No. So, the strict laws of cause and effect and everything that we see and know and everything in this universe is an appearance. Why? Because the quantum world has got none of these properties. The quantum world is giving rise to something like this. Is the quantum world an illusion giving rise to something we call a reality? Or this reality is giving rise to something called the illusion of the quantum world? But one thing is certain. One thing is appearing as another. This is what is called the bedrock of illusory phenomena. One thing, if this is the quantum world, it is a quantum world. So what are we seeing? We are not seeing a quantum world. That is your mistake. And if the quantum world is unreal, well, it's not unreal now, you know. So what is this? In the old, you can say, illustration of the Vedanta, the rope is appearing as a snake. Yes, that is again, that's part of the doctrine of superimposition, adhyasa by Shankaracharya. And you know, there are a lot of, you can say, examples, but the rope is appearing as a snake. Appearing. One thing is appearing as another. This world is an appearance. And so long we've been taking it for real, pinning all our hopes on it. Yeah. Okay. We'll need to kind of. So Swami Vivekananda, in his characteristic way, hard hitting. We do not know anything about the universe. Yet at the same time, we cannot say we do not know. This standing between light and darkness, this standing between knowledge and ignorance is our life. This is the mystic twilight, the mingling of truth and falsehood, and where they meet, nobody knows. He's saying we are walking in the midst of a haze, as it were, half sleeping, half waking. This is our life. And then he caps it off with, this is the fate of all philosophy, of all boasted science, of all boasted human knowledge. This is the universe. Yes, Swamiji, when he had to say something, he really said it. He never pulled back his punches. So, just to be a little philosophical now. Vedanta says there are 3 orders of reality. 3 orders? I thought there was one. The first is the absolute. It's called a paramarthika, satta. Satta is reality, the supreme reality or absolute reality. The second is relative reality, vyavaharika, relative. So absolute reality, relative reality, and then there's a third called the pratibhasika, the illusory. There are 3 orders of reality. But is it like going from one floor to the other? No. They're all curled up within each other. The illusory is within the relative within the illusory, and both are within the absolute. And that's why all this confusion. So here we are. Swamiji, again, in his inspired talks which he gave in the Thousand Island Parks on the East Coast, he says, the Buddhists say, realize all this as illusion. But Vedanta says that within the illusion is the real. So there's an absolute reality also hidden within the relative and the illusory. So this pratibhasika satta, the reality called illusory, is part of the structure of the universe. Otherwise we would not be able to see sunset and sunrise and all that. So now, what is the cause of this illusion? I told you that it's the structure of this world and the structure of the mind and the structure of the senses. Yeah, we can't get out of this. But even as I had mentioned, cognition or perception and knowledge are 2 different things. Can't we understand the distinction? Yes, we can. But there is another factor that kicks in. So, one devotee will ask Sri Ramakrishna, quote, if the world of nature is an illusion, magic, then why doesn't one get rid of it? Unquote. Sri Ramakrishna replies, quote, it is due to samskaras, impressions, that is knowledge impressions, whatever has come in leaves a residue, those are called samskaras. Inborn tendencies, repeated birth in this world of Maya makes one believe that Maya is real. So now we know where exactly we've got to hit in order to understand the reality. Break that. It's those impressions in the mind. Over and over and over and over, we are laying it out. Not in this life. This life is nothing. You see how it is silly, stupid, short, ridiculous, boring. What is this life? So, plenty of lives you've had. All those things are layered and they kind of are giving us this false knowledge. Okay. It's nice to bring Sri Ramakrishna inside. So he says, now this is a paradox. Very clear, he says. Look at the body of a man. The head is the root, but it is at the top. And there, can you understand? We are seeing the whole world upside down. In the Bhagavad Gita and even in the Upanishads, Katha Upanishad, there is a mighty tree, the people tree, which is roots above and branches below. That's a tree of the world. Everything, branches, trees, leaves, twigs, all that thing. So we are seeing things either inside out or upside down. We are not seeing things correctly. How do I end my talk? It has been a nice long one. We started off with the sunset. Okay. I think we can end it up with the sunset. So, as you understand the reality, you will see the sun again setting. Nothing has changed optically for you, but you have understood the reality. You will know the truth. And like in the Upanishad, the person is praying. He says, O thou who art the nourisher, the solitary traveler, is speaking to the god of the sun god, the controller, the acquirer, the son of Prajapati, do remove thy rays, do gather up thy dazzle. I shall behold by thy grace that form of thine which is most benign. I am that person that is yonder, that is, he finds his own identification with that sun. Now, he's going to get scorched and he's going to get kind of cindered. The sun represents universal consciousness. Whenever you see the symbolism of the sun in the Upanishad and Vedanta, it means that universal consciousness. So there he kind of, that person, Pushanne Karsheyama Surya Prajapatya Vyuharashmin Sammuha Tejo Yatte Rupam Kalyanatamam Tathe Pashami Yosavaso Purusha Sohamasmi. This was spoken more than 5,000-6,000 years ago It's in one of the oldest of the Upanishads, in the oldest of the parts of the Vedas. What a tremendous kind of exaltation this is. There is no difference between anything now. The illusion has all gone off. And this is going to be our life. Om, peace, peace, peace. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I have a question about the illusion of movement. And then in your last talk, you said that the nature of reality is movement. Can you speak about that?
The nature of reality cannot be movement, it's achala. The nature of nature is movement. It's constant. It is chala. And that's why the Atman is called the immovable one. So remember that. So in Christian theology, the spirit moves. According to, now I don't want to go into the European dialectical philosophy, thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. According to this philosophy, it's movement. Nature moves. Nature answers to everything. You don't need a God. So they pushed out God. So that was, so nature, according to them, moves. According to theologians, the spirit moves. And spirit is not the reality for us. In India, at least in Indian philosophical system, the spirit, as we call it, is nothing but the mind, the subtle mind. Okay, it's called, it has a body. It's called a subtle body. That is classed as a spirit. But the Atman, the reality, is distinct from the spirit. Spirit moves, let it move. Nature moves, let it move. That's the nature of the world. But the reality cannot move, because if it moves, it's not real anymore. Because it is traveling from one place to another. It will be delimited by space and time. Got this? It won't be absolute. Yeah, it won't be absolute. It will be relative. Suppose I travel from here to there. So what my travel itself is my own limitations.
So what moves?
That's an illusion. You're sitting in the train and everything moving out. Oh, what's moving? Nothing's moving. But you're seeing it moving. That's an illusion. Think about it. Yeah.
Could you kind of explain the difference between the relative reality and the illusionary reality? Talk about the three.
Yeah, those three orders of existence is called the absolute, the relative, and the illusory. Like for instance, it's just electromagnetism here, but we are seeing it as light. That's illusory. Okay. I am speaking to you, you are kind of responding, and you are speaking and I am responding. These are relative dynamisms. Okay, it's within the fabric of time and space.
So is that duality?
Oh yes, of course, it has to be duality. But Vedanta does not say that that is the ultimate reality.
So is duality above of our regular illusion?
Oh yeah, oh yeah, of course. Because there is something called an objective world and there is something called a subjective world. That's a duality. The higher duality is between the God and the soul. Okay. So, but this duality, it has to be there. Otherwise, and there are of course very higher forms of Advaita Vedanta that says there is absolutely no duality at all levels. But then we don't need to go right up to that. It's called a Jata Vada, that is the doctrine of unbornness. What do you mean this universe was created? There is no universe. What are you talking about? Like you meet a sage who has realized the absolute, and you are talking to him about the relative. You say, what are you talking about? I don't see the universe. I don't see the world. What are you talking about? But I'm seeing it here. And this has been the problem when people have gone and spoken or questioned either Ramana Maharishi or Nisargadatta Maharaj and all these Ramakrishna, Vivekananda. What are you talking about, stupid? There's no world here. But I see it. That's your problem. You deal with it. So that's it. So that doctrine, it comes at a final kind of, it's a pinnacle of Advaita. So we need to work our way out from the illusory at least. Understand it. And then understand the nature of duality. One is appearing as a many. If you can keep this in mind, the one is appearing as the many. As the Upanishad, Ekoham Bhavishyama, I am one, let me be many. So if you can hold that, then your job is to come towards that one. But the question was about duality and about the three orders of existence that I mentioned: absolute, the relative, and the illusory. They are all curled one into the other. Okay. When we have an out of body experience, are we experiencing reality? You are experiencing reality whether you're in the body or outside the body. And that reality is nothing but your own conditionings. So the moment you come away from all bodies, gross, subtle, and causal, then you can understand reality as reality. So as long as you have the idea of a body, whether gross or subtle, it's not real. Okay. So I'm talking from the highest standpoint, but out of body experiences, that's a good thing. We spoke about it last Sunday and we already have. Okay. Thank you very much. Om, peace, peace.